speaker who has great expertise in the said topic. Our speaker for today is Dr. Muhammad Hadi, who is currently working as an associate professor of clinical pharmacy and practice at College of Pharmacy in Qatar University. Prior to joining Qatar University, he was an associate professor of pharmacy practice and policy at the University of Birmingham, UK. He has held various academic positions at Malaysian, Australian, and Saudi universities in the past. Dr. Hadi completed his PhD in pharmaceutical health services research from University of Leeds, UK. At Birmingham, Dr. Hadi was program director of Independent Prescribing Program, and he was also chair of School of Pharmacy Research Ethics Committee. Dr. Hadi is a research methodologist and likes to work across different disciplines. He has successfully supervised master's and PhD students. He has published over 75 papers in international peer-reviewed journals and has also contributed chapters in pharmaceutical policy books. Dr. Hadi is also Associate Director for various journals. He is a scientist member of Royal Pharmaceutical Society and Fellow of Higher Education Academy, UK. Without further ado, I would like to welcome Dr. Muhammad Hadi to conduct the session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sana, and thank you very much, Dr. Siddiqui, for inviting me to speak to all of you today on advancing pharmacy practice through research, why, what, and how. I'll try to keep this session for about, I've been given 2 hours. So what I'm planning to do is that we will do a 40-minute session now, and then we'll do a 10 minutes break, and then we'll come back for the final hour. And I leave last 15-20 minutes for discussions. It is not a research methodology lecture, so anyone who has joined today expecting that I'll be teaching on any of the particular research methodology, then perhaps you probably don't want to be here. You can spend next 2 hours doing something else. This is basically, I'm trying to advocate the need of research in advancing pharmacy practice. When I was a student, we always used to look up, how a pharmacist and why pharmacists can do so many things in the West, but we can't do anything in Pakistan. So, over the past 15, 17 years, in my professional life, I've learned a lot of lessons, and I'll be sharing how they have advanced pharmacy practice, how they have recognized the status of pharmacists within their community. And it is still an ongoing fight. So I'll be sharing those experiences. I'll try and ask you guys as well, what do you think how pharmacy practice should be shaped in Pakistan, what we need to do, and how it can be done. And finally, I will talk about a brief introduction I'll give about how to set up a good research question with regards to developing and advancing pharmacy practice. If you have any questions, I'll try to keep things very informal whenever I'm teaching, whether I'm teaching online or face to face. So if you have any questions, if you disagree with me, please feel free to raise your concerns or ask any question. You can stop me at any time. I don't mind. If you want to keep your questions at the end, that is perfectly fine. If you want to keep post the questions in the chat box as the session progress, please feel free to do so as well. And Dr. Sana will pick those questions and she can ask me in those questions either during the session or at the end of the session. This is what I wanted to say as an introduction. Any questions that you have? Can you all see my screen? A yes or a no will help. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, we can.
That's okay. That's great.
Yes, we
Um,
can.
so this is our topic today: advancing pharmacy practice through research. Why, what, and how. By the way, this is we have started fasting here in Qatar today. This is for first Ramadan today here. So if you see my energy going down, or if I you know if I'm not speaking loud enough, just ask me, and I will try uh, to regain my energy somehow, and I'll try to speak a bit loud. Okay. So let's start today's workshop. uh, so this is, as I've mentioned, this is what I'll be talking today. Why pharmacy practice research is important, what type of pharmacy practice research is required in, if we are thinking
हाँ
to
खुल गई
advance.
खुल गई आ गई आवाज आ रही है हाँ मुझे जबान फिर आवाज बंद हो गई
Can I ask everyone to please mute their mics, please? Thank you. Can you all hear me? If you can't hear me, then please let me know. Okay, that's great. Finally, I'll talk about how to start a pharmacy practice research. What is the starting point? How can we start? Because we have to start from somewhere. I've got absolutely no idea who is in the audience. I am expecting it's pharmacy students who are either undertaking pharmacy degree, or they have recently completed pharmacy degrees. If there are mid-career, or um, experienced researchers or early career researchers here, then perhaps this is something very basic for them. But I'm happy for discussions. It's good to have senior members as well. Okay, so before we begin, we need to understand what pharmacy practice is. And what I want you to do is, there are 21 participants, so 22 now. I will divide you into groups in breakout rooms. And then within your group, you need to introduce to each other. This will give you an opportunity to get to know each other. Networking is very important in professional growth and advancing pharmacy practice as well. So uh, perhaps a group, 5 participants in each group. Please remember your breakout room number, because your breakout room number um, will be your group number. Okay, so we'll divide you into group of 5. You'll have 5 minutes to discuss among yourself what is pharmacy practice, what does it mean to you. Okay, because different people might have different understanding of what pharmacy practice is. So before we start even about what is pharmacy practice research, we have to reach some sort of consensus, among, at least among us, that what is pharmacy practice, so that then when we talk about pharmacy practice research, it makes sense. Okay. So Ms. Sana, can you please divide them into groups of 5 breakout rooms? If you can do it, otherwise I can do it as well.
Sure, sir. I'll
Let
arrange
us
them.
do that, inshallah. Hold on.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself in the group and discuss what is pharmacy practice.
So breakout rooms are going in now.
Please accept the invitation and join the room.
To all participants, please go ahead and accept the room assignment so that you can join the room. उसके बाद जो है फिर we'll come back after whatever time frame Hadi bhai said to meet in a larger group, inshallah. Inshallah, we'll be closing the breakout rooms in the next 30 seconds.
Okay, so everyone is back. So I asked you to introduce yourself to the group earlier when you were in breakout rooms, and I asked you to discuss what is pharmacy practice. So group number 4, breakout room number 4, what did you guys discuss? Anyone can speak from group number 4, please? Mariam, Yamna, anyone? No one wants to speak? Room number 3, room number 2, anyone would want to share their thoughts, what you guys discussed? Okay, I thought only I'm fasting. You guys are not fasting today. I think in anticipation, you don't, there is no right and wrong answer. So this gives you guys another opportunity to speak in
They're
public.
actually, sir, answering on the chat.
Okay.
Should I ask them to,
No. You
unmute and answer?
you can unmute yourself and speak as well. Can they unmute
Assalamualaikum,
themselves?
sir. Assalamualaikum, sir.
Yes, Walaikum Salam.
Sir, we belong to room number 1. So Muhammad Hamza and we were speaking. I'm Faisal Rashid. So we were speaking about the pharmacy practice, and he suggested that it is related to dispensing, compounding in pharmacy, and yet I haven't studied about pharmacy practice, and this is my first ever session about pharmacy practice. So I suggested that it belonged to the hospital system, like dose adjustment, dose interaction, and to study about the future plans about the drug or anything else. So this was all we discussed about pharmacy practice, sir.
And Faisal, are you a first year student, second year, third year, fourth year, and which
Sir,
university? If you could kindly introduce yourself, please.
I have just cleared, sir, third year, and now I'm in fourth year, and I belong to Government University, Deir Ismail Khan, sir.
Okay, thank you, Faisal. Anyone
Thank
else
you, sir.
would want to add what Faisal has just said? No one wants to add? You can unmute yourself and speak. Public speaking is an important skill when it comes to pharmacy practice, research, and advocacy. It's your ability to to integrate your arguments and present your argument in a way that you can influence practice and policy. That is a key skill that you will need.
Vardha, kindly unmute yourself and give the answer that you have typed.
Okay, what Vardha is saying is pharmacy practice are the steps which are taken by pharmacists in any field of pharmacy, either hospital, community, or outpatient. That is very good. Yumna says that supply of medication, assure quality of the products and appropriate information. Thank you, Yumna. Uh, Osama says this is concerned with the art and science of selecting, procuring, recommending, administering, preparing, compounding, packaging, and dispensing of drugs, medicines, and devices used or prevention of disease, whether compounded. Okay, that's great. Mariam says compounding, dispensing, manufacturing, pharmaceutical care, rational use of medicine, reduced medication errors, evidence-based clinical use. That's great. Excellent. So, yes, because of disparity in what is pharmacy practice, how pharmacy practice is understood around the world. um, you know, Sechel and colleagues tried to define what pharmacy practice is, and they tried to develop a conceptual model for an international audience that incorporate the basic pillars of what pharmacy practice is. So how they have described pharmacy or pharmaceutical practice is that there are four key conceptual disciplines that that um, have the underpinning knowledge. They provide underpinning knowledge for practicing pharmacy, and which includes social and administrative pharmacy sciences, community pharmacy, clinical pharmacy or hospital pharmacy, and finally pharmaceutical sciences. And with regards to the acts of practice, they have highlighted three different areas. The acts of pharmacy practice include teaching, research, advocacy, and service. So if you look at this conceptual diagram, what they have tried to do is to so that pharmacy practice is understood um, across different regions using the same terminologies. As you have noticed here that some of you had highlighted, procuring, administering, dispensing, reducing medication errors, and these are the subcomponents, if you let me say so, about clinical pharmacy or community pharmacy practice. But as such, that is a service that a pharmacist provides. These are different services which pharmacists provide. Um, uh, for example, if I'm teaching, I'm a pharmacist, and I train. Uh, I train the future generation of pharmacists. So I am trying to build my practice of pharmacy is with regards to teaching of pharmacy practice. So it's a slightly different concept that it goes beyond the patient-facing roles of pharmacists. It goes beyond that our core understanding, which is dispensing, administering, procuring, those which involve direct service-oriented role. As you can see, the research is very important and highlighted here as when it comes to pharmacy practice. So now another concept that formulated or that governs the future of pharmacy practice is the concept of pharmaceutical care. Some of you might have already heard this term. Some of you might not have heard this term. So I thought it would be good that we start with our today's session with this terminology, with the discussion on what is pharmaceutical care. Because this concept, introduction of this concept in 1970s, you know, changed the paradigm of pharmacy profession itself. It moved pharmacy from product-oriented profession to a patient-oriented or a patient-centered profession. It encouraged pharmacists to move from the back of the shelves and play an active role in direct patient care. So for pharmacists, the core concept, the core service, the core responsibility is around pharmaceutical care today and in future as well. So what is pharmaceutical care? So it is the responsible provision of drug therapy for the purpose of achieving definite outcomes that improve a patient's quality of life, arresting or slowing of disease process. So there are two key terminologies which I've already highlighted in red, that it is a responsible provision that aims at achieving definite outcomes. Why do you think responsible provision? Why responsible? The term responsible is used here. Anyone would want to unmute their mic and speak? Why do you guys think that responsible is important here? Please, if you are shy of speaking, then you can type in the chat box as well. That's perfectly fine. Why responsible? So that we can sustain care for a long time to come. Probably yes, that is one of the goals. Yes. Basically, responsibility. Unmute. Faisal wants to be unmuted. Dr. Siddiqui, can you please unmute Faisal? Or I think I can unmute as well.
Yes, we have asked him to unmute.
Sir, responsible provision, this is basically, I think, related to, sir, the pharmacist is only responsible for this kind of action, sir.
Okay. And why do you think they should be responsible?
Sir, because only the pharmacists know about because sir, the drug bank is, like a pharmacist, because for the whole life he has studied about pharmacy, drugs and interaction, etc., etc. So he can only supervise or provide any patient in a good way or in a better way, sir.
Okay, that is partly correct. Anyone else would want to speak or any message? Either drug is safe or not. I think, yes, you are going in the nitty-gritty of the things, whether drug is safe, whether the drug is effective, whether it is a rational choice of the drug or not. These are the actions or the consequences. But here the term responsible provision, that when pharmacists have been given authority, then they are responsible for it. So they are answerable. So this is a very key concept. When now the pharmacists are involved directly in patient care, now they are responsible in ensuring the maximum patient outcomes, in improving patients' quality of life. So if you fail to achieve these, you are responsible for these. Okay, so authority comes with responsibility. So this concept is very important, that here the pharmacist should be sensitive enough, should be trained in a manner that they are sensitive about their responsibility, that it is my responsibility to ensure the best possible outcomes for the patients. If I have been given this authority to do this, to optimize medication, to change or to stop or to start a medication, it is then my responsibility to ensure the best patient outcomes. Okay, so that is the word responsible provision is very important here when it comes to pharmaceutical care. There are two key concepts in pharmaceutical care. Number one is the direct patient benefit, and number two is the pharmacist is directly responsible for patients' outcome. As I've mentioned earlier, that now you've been given the opportunity to go work in the wards. Now I've been reading news in Pakistan that they were saying that the Punjab government has introduced 50 pharmacists per one pharmacist for every 50 bed. That is perfectly fine. You get the job. Now it's your responsibility to ensure now you are on the ward. What do you do on the ward becomes your responsibility. And it is of great, it is of very huge, it is of a very high importance that what do these pharmacists do. Because if a government wants to make amendments in these services or want to expand this from Punjab to KPK to Sindh to Balochistan, then they'll need some evidence that what the pharmacists have been doing. Have they saved any money? Have they improved patient outcomes? Why the government should invest in pharmacy services in Pakistan? So having this job, yes, pharmacists, I know my friends, even including my friends, they were very happy when they were offered a grade 17 job, government job, grade 17, excellent. After 10, 12 years, you'll be promoted to grade 18. After 10, 12 is grade 19, and that goes on. But what do we do with those jobs? How are we performing? If I have to do an audit of what pharmacists do in the wards and then map in terms of return on the investment that the government is making, then will I have enough data to document and prove sustainability of those services? Probably the answer right now is no. So the question the government should be asking that why should we invest in pharmacy services? Okay, so it is a very important issue that we need to pay attention to. Aisha has raised hand. If you could unmute Aisha, please.
Yes, sir, I am unmuted. Can I talk, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I am working in the government sector as, of course, grade 17 pharmacist, and this is really disheartening to listen that हमारी services ऐसे हैं कि these will not provide sustainability to the job. Actually, at ward level, we are given more 50 beds each pharmacist कहा गया है, but we are given 100 to 150 beds at least, plus a satellite pharmacy. We have to look after that pharmacy as well. और सब स्टोर कह लें या सैटेलाइट फार्मेसी कह लें, एंड देन 100 to 150 बेड्स एटलीस्ट. इस तरह से रेशो डिवाइड किया गया बिकॉज दोज फार्मासिस्ट, दोज 50 बेड्स, वन फार्मासिस्ट में जो रेशो में फार्मासिस्ट हैं, दे आर वर्किंग in stores, in purchase, in health commission, in waste control, waste management, and more, so many services. उनको डिस्ट्रीब्यूट और डिवाइड कर दिया गया डिफरेंट एरियाज में, वो वार्ड लेवल पे नहीं काम करे. अब मैं आपको वार्ड लेवल का थोड़ा सा क्लियर कर दूं कि हर जगह पे एक फोकल, जैसे हमारे हॉस्पिटल में डेंगू या कोविड आया तो फोकल पर्सन्स बना दिए गए, उसी तरह जब हम वार्ड लेवल पे काम कर रहे होते हैं, वी आर एक्टिंग एज अ फोकल पर्सन और अ लाइजन ऑफिसर बिटवीन नर्सेज, डॉक्टर्स एंड स्टोर्स एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन. हम मेडिसिन को जिस तरह हमें मैसेज दिया जाता है उस तरह रेशनलाइज यूज करवा रहे होते हैं, जहां डॉक्टर्स या नर्सेज को डाइल्यूशन या जो पूछना होता है वो भी बता देते हैं. इससे ज्यादा तो वी हैव टू वर्क लाइक डोंकीज. सॉरी टू से if I'm exaggerating or misusing the words, लेकिन इससे ज्यादा काम क्या करना है गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर फार्मासिस्ट ने? उनके काम को उसी तरह से एक्सेप्ट किया जाए। हम कहते हैं अगर हमने एक दिन में एक मेडिकेशन एरर देखा है या एक वीक में, तो कहेंगे ये एक एरर है। बट इस चीज को रियलाइज किया जाए, इफ वी वर्क इन वार्ड्स और हम 50-100 पेशेंट्स देखते हैं तो हमें एक एरर मिलता है। ये नहीं होता कि बाय चांस हम गए वार्ड में, एक पेशेंट देखा और एक एरर मिल गया। दिस इज नॉट लाइक दिस। वी हैव टू वर्क होल like duty hours. बस इतना कहना था। थैंक यू।
जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच आयशा। सॉरी इफ आई कम अक्रॉस कि मैं कह रहा था कि फार्मासिस्ट वार्ड्स में काम नहीं कर रहे। आई डिड दैट वाज नॉट माय इंटेंशन। इफ आई हैव कम अक्रॉस दैट, आई डू रियली अपोलोजाइज, यू नो। एंड मैं जो कॉन्सेप्ट जो मैं यहाँ पे बात करना चाह रहा था कि दैट्स ग्रेट इफ फार्मासिस्ट आर वर्किंग इन वेस्ट मैनेजमेंट, in as a liaison officer. That is excellent. That is excellent. But what we need to do is we need to document those things. We need to generate evidence, and this is why I have started off with this, the term pharmaceutical care. So that, you know, when we go through the next phase of our discussion, and then we know why we are discussing this. So one drug related problem is excellent. uh, Perhaps, you know, अगर आप 150 beds cover कर रही हैं और आप still you are able to do this, perhaps having two pharmacists would make life even much better. Perhaps would improve patient outcomes much more. Maybe your ability to identify more drug related problems will be there. So, you know, is one thing is documenting the things that we are doing. Number two is advocacy, is very important. If you want to change something, you have to advocate, and we'll talk about this, that how we can start, and we can build on it. So thank you very much for sharing and your insight on the topic. And please feel free whenever you want to speak, any one of you, please feel free. You know, it's very good. मुझे पाकिस्तान छोड़े हुए 16-17 साल हो गए हैं, तो you know, my concept may not be as my concepts may not be as much relevant as you guys can bring into to this discussion. So thank you very much, Aisha. So please feel free to raise your hands whenever you want to speak. Not only Aisha, anyone who is working in practice, you know, please feel free to share your experiences, and probably then we can discuss that how we can document these small things and make them look big. And you know, at least when they go back, ask you, okay Aisha, what you have done, you know, in terms of patient improvement, do you have any evidence to support that? Then at least you have something to go back to and prove that, you know, over the past 1 year, I've reviewed that many case notes and I identified so many drug related problems, and that potentially could have been fatal, required hospitalization, or anything else could have happened to the patient. So, you know, probably think about along these lines. Okay, anyone else want to make any further comments, or we can move forward? Yes, Ikra says actually the need is to have a system to document all things properly. Uh, Excellent. Excellent. Yes, I agree that we should have this. Okay, so what is the European position of pharmaceutical services? In 2003, the NHS, the National Health Service in England or the United Kingdom, they published a white paper, and they called for using pharmacy strengths towards delivery of a safer, effective, and more patient-centered care. Because community pharmacists are the most accessible healthcare workers in England. So they wanted to use pharmacy strengths. You know, they have access to the patients, they have the knowledge, they have the skills. So this white paper talked about how we can upskill pharmacy workforce, how we can ask them to work across different services. For example, vaccination service, weight management service, smoking cessation service, blood pressure monitoring, sugar, diabetes monitoring service. So there are number of pharmacist-led services that are provided through community pharmacy in the UK, and this came because of so many other issues that are affecting, patient outcomes in the UK. And another editorial, very strong wording that they use, that pharmacists should move from behind the counter and start serving the public by providing care instead of the pills only. A very important, message in that editorial, that uh, we are working, we have entered in 21st century, and 21st century is century of robotics. If providing pills is our only job, then probably a robot can do it much better than us. I have seen few community pharmacies where robots are doing dispensing. Amazing experience to see how robots work when it comes to dispensing. You can have just like Coke, you know, cans can be dispensed. Similarly, you can scan your prescription. Perhaps you can have a machine that can dispense the medicines. So, looking at the future of pharmacy practice, we need to think about that if uh, providing pills is our only job, then perhaps uh, our profession will not be required probably in 10, 15 years, not 10, 15, 20, 25 years time, especially in the Western countries. So now there is a big argument that we should be directly involved in patient care. Dispensing pills is core responsibility of pharmacists. Dispensing pills does offer pharmacists opportunity to talk to patients about the medicines. But if we are going to dispense pills only, then perhaps that can be best done without pharmacists. Then there's absolutely no need to spend 5 years in studying pharmacy if dispensing pills is the only job that we are going to do. Okay. So why research? Why do we need research to advance pharmacy practice? Another break room activity. I think after this discussion, we will have a 5 minutes break as well. So again, Miss Sana, Dr. Sana, sorry, if you could send them, there are 32 participants. 5 rooms should be enough. Um, and if you are new to each other, please introduce yourself. Tell each other which year of study you are in, which college of pharmacy do you guys go to, so that you know each other. If you want to switch your cameras on and see each other, that is perfectly fine. If you don't want to do that, that is perfectly fine. And then finally, you need to discuss, why do we need research? I'll have you guys for about 10 minutes, and each room should identify a spokesperson, and that spokesperson, when asked from that room, should be able to speak about what did they discuss. Let's make it more formal this time rather than last time. Okay, so can we have the groups, breakout rooms, please? And you'll have 10 minutes to do the introduction. If you're in a different group than your first group, even if you have, even if a single person is different, please introduce yourself. Okay. And then in the next 10 minutes or so, please discuss, why do we need research to advance pharmacy practice. So please join the room.
डॉक्टर हादी इंशाल्लाह इंडिकेट कर दीजिएगा whenever you want
जी जी
the room.
मैंने 2 मिनट्स का दे दिया नोटिफिकेशन.
Okay, just sorry, ठीक है.
Okay, so everyone is back in the room. So I hope that you had some time to discuss these. May I request everyone to please mute their mics if possible? Thank you. Moving on. Let's start off with room number 5. Who was the speaker? Who is the lead that you have identified, and what you guys discussed? It's a group with Abdullah, Arifa, Amna, Faryal, Faiza, Sabahat, and Salma. If you can unmute yourself.
Ms. Faiza, kindly unmute yourself.
Okay. I think Ms. Faiza cannot unmute herself. Anyone from room number 3? Bushra, Faisal, Hafsa, Arbab, Iram, Manahil, Muhammad. Faisal has raised his hand. Can we unmute Faisal, please?
अस्सलाम वालेकुम एंड हमने बात की कि क्लिनिकल फार्मेसी जो है उसमें हम रिसर्च जो है ना वो क्यों जरूरी है. आर यू लिसनिंग टू मी सर?
जी 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 जी
सर, तो हमने बात की कि क्लिनिकल रिसर्च जो है वो क्यों जरूरी है फार्मेसी प्रैक्टिस में. आई मीन तो उसके लिए हमने कहा कि सर जो मेडिकेशन एरर होते हैं सर, एडवर्स इफेक्ट होते हैं, साइड इफेक्ट होते हैं सर, ये अगर हम किसी भी हॉस्पिटल से जो प्रॉपर डेटा होता है सर वो अगर हम ले लें, किसी भी हॉस्पिटल से प्रॉपर डेटा लें और उस पर जो है ना रिसर्च करें कि इसको कैसे मिनिमाइज किया जाए ताकि जो है ना कि पेशेंट हेल्थ केयर के लिए जो है ना कोई बेहतरीन तरीका ढूंढा जाए और उसे जो है ना 100% जो है ना श्योरिटी हो कि वो इंशाल्लाह सेहतयाब होगा। इसी के लिए जो है सर हम जो है क्लिनिकल फार्मेसी जो है ना उसमें रिसर्च करते हैं।
Okay, thank you, Faisal. Anyone from group number 2? Johanna, Mariam, Rana Mahmood. Johanna, research in pharmacy practice strengthens new ideas and concepts regarding improved patient care and enhances health services. Research paves way for
Assalamualaikum
reducing
everyone.
medication.
This is Faiza from room number 5.
Ji Faisal. Walaikum Assalam. Yes, Faisal, please go on. Anyone from room number 1? Osama Saeed has raised his hand. If you can unmute him as well, please. Osama and then Pfizer. Miss Sana, Dr. Sana, can you please unmute for Osama and Pfizer? Both have requested.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Ji, Walaikum Assalam.
I think research is required to provide evidence to policymakers about drugs, right? Where drugs interacts with patient and reaction on patients, etc. like that.
Excellent. Anything else? Anyone else would want to say anything?
Assalamualaikum everyone. This is Faiza from IPS UAS. I am from room number 5. Most of the people were not speaking, only Arifa, I guess.
Okay, Yumna says research is important in every aspect in minimizing errors and increasing quality. But adding one thing for countries like we can make medicines cost effective through research. This is my question too. Can we make medicines cost effective through research? Generate evidence to inform policymakers, Osama says. That's excellent. So the question where we can we make drugs cost effective? Yes, we can by doing research. Not only so, drug manufacturing is not only pharmacist's job. I think this is a very key, very critical misconception that pharmacists are the custodian and manufacturers of the drugs. Pharmacists are among a team of group of scientists that play a role in drug development. Big data scientists, computer scientists, chemical scientists, chemists, physicists, and environmental engineers, pharmacists, doctors, um, uh, a number of people are involved in drug development. It's not only pharmacists who play a role. Yes, we can do research to improve drugs, make drugs cost effective. We can reduce the production process to reduce the cost of the production so that it can be available at a cheaper price to the consumer. We can and work on from anywhere, from the procurement of the raw material to the development of packaging to tableting if it is a solid dosage form, anywhere in the process which requires a cost. If that cost can be reduced through research, rather than having a 5-step process, it is a 1-step process. 3D manufacturing, a lot of people are talking about 3D manufacturing. If this happens, probably the cost of the equipment that requires for a particular dosage form can be reduced. The drugs can be, the cost of the drugs can be reduced. So there are a number of things that we can do to reduce the cost of the drug. That's the answer to your question. And coming back to our main question, why do we need research to advance pharmacy practice? So we live in an era of evidence-based medicine. I agree to the points that all of you have made. We live in an era of evidence-based medicine where all the decisions that we make as clinicians, as pharmacists, as a healthcare professional should be informed by the best possible available evidence at that time. For example, whether I should take my COVID-19 vaccine or not. How do you make that decision? Most likely you look at the 2 aspects, safety and efficacy. Is it safe to take COVID-19 vaccine? And if I take COVID-19 vaccine, is it effective? Okay, these are the 2 key principles that will determine your decision. So you will do some sort of risk benefit analysis in your head before making that decision. Or you will see someone else from your experience, someone in your family who had COVID and he or she suffered quite a lot. Someone might have lost a relative, a close family member, a friend through COVID. That would have prompted you to take a vaccine. Someone just took vaccine because they had to travel. They didn't believe in it, but they took vaccine because taking vaccine was mandatory for traveling to a certain country. Okay, so you will, there are different motivations for taking a particular vaccine. But when it comes to a clinical decision making, as you as a clinician, you will do some sort of risk benefit assessment in your head before making a clinical decision. You will rely on your clinical expertise. You will use that clinical expertise to take a very good patient history, and you'll discuss that history with the patient with regards to his or her own values, whether the patient is okay to take a medicine that contains gelatin. If a patient is happy to take medicine, which is the best one, but it requires intravenous administration. If the patient is okay to take medicine through rectal route. So there are number of things that you need to discuss uh, to finally reach an evidence-based practice. So from evidence-based medicine to evidence-based practice, this is what we want to do as a healthcare provider. And in order for pharmacy, now think about pharmacy services. Think about this diagram and think about pharmacy services. If you want to identify a drug related problem, if you want to advocate for more pharmacists on wards, if you want to advocate for more pharmacists in policy making, if you want to advocate for more pharmacists in clinical waste management, if you want to advocate for more pharmacists in store, in procurement, and if you want to do that, you have to start looking at what is the evidence. What evidence is informing the practice and policy? And in my paper back in 2013, I argued that rigorous research methods to evaluate these newly developed pharmacy services are crucial to determine their effectiveness and to enhance their acceptability among other healthcare professionals, patients, and policymakers. It's not only for us. We have to look at how's the acceptability of our recommendations among the doctors. And Aisha perhaps can tell us her experiences of whenever she makes a recommendation, how much resistance does she face from doctors in accepting her uh, recommendations. Most of the patients might say, uh, आप डॉक्टर हैं मेरे डॉक्टर ने ये कहा and it sometimes it will be very discouraging for pharmacists as a healthcare professionals to understand and to for to see that their job their role is not being well recognized within the healthcare system. The patients even don't recognize them. They have no trust in pharmacy services often, and policymakers are just not bothered about improving pharmacy profession in Pakistan. So it is very disheartening. I understand that. And this is a fight that still pharmacists are facing. This is a discrimination that pharmacists are still facing in the US, in Canada, in UK. It is you know the only problem is that we don't see this fight, um, and our struggle is different is because of the nature, the very nature of our healthcare system, the very nature of the clinical demographics of our patient. And we are part of a third world country, unfortunately. So in to compare our services with that of the UK and the US is I think is not correct, because our investment in healthcare system is much far less than the investments that those Western countries have done in uplifting pharmacy or uplifting their uh, uh, healthcare system in general. Okay, so how Pakistan can do it? The best way I think is to learn from international examples. And before I do that, I think we can have a quick 5 minutes break, so that you guys can stretch. Those who are not fasting can bring a cup of tea or whatever they want to bring in, and then we will start from here and until we finish by uh, 3 or 5 o'clock your time. So we can have a 5 minutes quick break, and then I'll see you at 3, 4. Thank you. I think we can start now. Is everyone back?
Yes, we are all here.
Okay, great. Dr. Siddiqui, can you please stop sharing your screen so that I can share mine?
आदि भाई आपने कुछ सवाल पूछा?
Yes, I was just saying that if you can stop sharing your screen, I can share mine. Because what I can see is live on YouTube now on the screen. Okay, thank you. Can you all see my screen now? Great. Okay. So we were discussing about how the West has done uh, with regards to improving pharmacy services. Because as a developing country, we can learn from their experiences, how they have done it. We can try and see what adaptations can we make. I think copying and pasting exactly the same in our society or in our healthcare system might not be the best solution for that. But there is absolutely no harm whatsoever in learning from them what and how they have done it. And then we can see that what aspects of that uh, uh, process can be implemented within our healthcare system and what processes cannot be implemented in our healthcare system, and then we can take the debate forward. So I'll give you some examples of what they have done and how they have done, and then will go to our the um, final session of our today's topic is about developing a good quality research question. Okay. uh, So a pharmacist-led, anticoagulation clinic is a common service that is offered by pharmacists in the West. So how they have done it, they did a lot of small studies, looked at small pharmacy service, pharmacist clinic in a medical center or in a hospital or in the primary care center, and they have established small pharmacist-led services, anticoagulation services. They did some small bits and pieces of research here and there, and then finally they did a systematic review looking at the two common models of management of warfarin therapy: pharmacist-led services versus usual medical care. And what they found that patients who attended pharmacist-led service, they were able to they were able to reach time in the therapeutic range. 72% of the patients were able to achieve that versus 56.7% in the usual care group. Especially and in with regards to the safety, major bleeding events were significantly less in pharmacist group. Similarly, thromboembolic events were less in pharmacy group as well, and which would eventually, if there is no major bleeding, there are less thromboembolic events, then it will lead to less hospitalization, less emergency department visits, and more cost saving and patient satisfaction. So this is how they are. Now, if you are a policymaker, and if you are thinking to develop a new service in your hospital or in your or you are a mayor of a city or in your city, then you will probably look at this evidence, and rather than investing in a service that provides the usual typical medical care, you will probably invest in a service where pharmacist leads this kind of service. Similarly, I looked at how what is the role of pharmacist-led medication reviews in pain management, and what I found again was that patients who had received pharmacist-led medication review had a better had a reduced pain intensity both at 3 months interval and at 6 months interval, and furthermore they had improved physical functioning both at 3 months interval and 6 months interval. Again, if I have to develop a pain management service, I would probably will include a pharmacist that provides a medication review, because now there is sufficient evidence that supports the use of pharmacist in pain management. Uh, and they were patients were extremely satisfied with the service provided by the pharmacist as well. That is an interesting study. What Malaysia noticed that before, in fact, for us, that is a very good trajectory. Um, what we noticed, what Malaysia noticed with regards to their adverse drug reaction reporting system, that the contribution of pharmacists was minimal. And before 2005, where it became mandatory for every graduate pharmacist to work for 2 years in government service in order to, because there was acute shortage of pharmacists in the public healthcare setting, because most of the pharmacists used to go either travel abroad or work for the industry or work for the community, because the salaries were much better there, and they end up with very few pharmacists working in the hospital sector. So they made it compulsory in 2005, that all the pharmacists should work for government for at least 2 years. Only then they used to get a license to work outside. And once, what they've noticed is, once they have more pharmacists on wards, the number of adverse drug reaction reporting almost doubled, more than doubled in the following 4 years, because of increasing pharmacy workforce. There were more pharmacists on the wards, and they were providing direct patient care. They were able to identify more adverse drug reactions, and because they were many of them, they've had the time to report those adverse drug reaction, and those adverse drug reactions were reported. So what, when Aisha mentioned earlier that if we have to review 10 to find one drug related problem, again, perhaps because you are stressed with the amount of other things that you are doing, probably you yourself will be missing a lot of drug related problems because of the work related stress. If you ask me to teach 5 classes in a day, what I'll do is probably my first class will be, I'll teach them with full energy, with full enthusiasm. But as the time will go to second, third, fourth, and fifth, probably I'll have no energy to teach class number 5. And that will be my worst class ever. So, having more pharmacists on the work on the ward can potentially improve the reporting of adverse drug reactions. And once we have adverse local, adverse national pharmacovigilance center, which can pick on signals that which drugs are affecting what sort of population and what is the signal generation, probably then that can feed back to the doctors who are making those prescribing decisions. Similarly, the pharmacist in community pharmacists, another important role of pharmacists in the West is pharmacist-led hypertension clinics. And what they have done is, in this systematic review, they have looked at different studies who have looked at the effectiveness of pharmacist-led medication reviews or counseling activities, within the community pharmacies with regards to control of hypertension. And what they found is, if you look at the red rectangle at the bottom, it says that pharmacists significantly reduced blood pressure of 6 milliliter of mercury, almost 6 milliliter of mercury, which is quite significant, both not only statistically significant but also clinically significant as well. Similarly, there was a slightly less impact on diastolic blood pressure compared to systolic blood pressure, but there was significant reduction in diastolic blood pressure as well. So the question is what we need to do in Pakistan, what Pakistan needs to do. Okay, 5 minutes breakout room, please. Can we have a quick 5 minutes breakout room in which Aisha has raised her hand if she wants to speak before we go into breakout room? Can we unmute Aisha, please?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Actually, before going to breakout room, I just want to say two things. One is training lectures, जैसे doctors की हमारे hospital में daily या weekly morning classes होती हैं, we need that too. हमें भी उसकी ज़रूरत है. And second is हमें like बिठाया इस तरह के environment में जाता है जो local या बहुत underprivileged pharmacist की environment होती है. हमें AC ठीक है मिला होता है, नहीं भी मिला होता. लेकिन हमसे काम कहते हैं, वो एक्सपेक्टेशंस रखी जाती हैं गवर्नमेंट सेटअप में जिस तरह का भी होता है, लेकिन एक्सपेक्टेशंस वो कहते हैं हम अब आप हमें यूरोपियन कंट्रीज जैसी दें. थर्ड चीज होती है कि अर्निंग, आपको सॉरी अर्निंग नहीं, वर्कलोड ज्यादा होता है और हम उस तरह से सर्विसेज नहीं दे सकते. एट द एंड हम क्लिनिकल सर्विसेज में से अपना टाइम बचा लेते हैं टू टेक सम रेस्ट, और बाकी हम मैनेजमेंट और दूसरी सर्विसेज देते रहते हैं. बस ये 3 पॉइंट्स कहने थे. थैंक यू.
Thank you, Ms. Aisha. We'll touch these all these three, inshallah, when we come back from the breakout room. So, Dr. Sana, can we have the breakout rooms, please? Just quick 5 minutes. Just I would like to see your thoughts on how do we do it in Pakistan now.
उनके तो मतलब तेरा क्वेश्चन डिस्कस करता है क्वेश्चन हुई
Okay, I hope everyone is back in the room. So, any thoughts what we need to do? I'll not go to each room. So anyone who wants to unmute and speak, we can have 3 minutes. You can take 1 minute and we can give 2 minutes to someone else. Please raise your hand if you want to speak so that we can unmute you. Marine says we need enthusiasm and consistency, and we lack that. Yes, that is true. Enthusiasm and consistency they both are very important. Okay, in the best interest of time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move on. I can see no one has raised hand or they were requested to speak. Um, what I think is this is what we need. We need to first of all upskill pharmacy workforce, as Aisha mentioned earlier, that we need to have bedside teaching just like doctors. Um, Probably we need to look at that as well and other models of upskilling our pharmacy workforce. That we have to ask ourselves: are our pharmacists being trained fit for the purpose? What is the purpose of pharmacy education? What sort of pharmacists do we need in the next 10, 15 years? Then as once we have developed that shared goal that this is what we need, then look back at our curriculum, at our training opportunities, at our relationship between industry and academia, and think about that how this current pharmacy curriculum can be reviewed, revised, and updated in order to meet future needs, workforce needs of pharmacists. One is undergraduate education. That is perfectly fine. We can have deficiencies. We can never be perfect. Then what do we have for our postgraduate pharmacists? What type of continuous professional education opportunities can we provide to them? I think giving it back to Pakistan, Dr. Siddiqui has done a lot of work behind the scenes in order for me to give this presentation. This is one of the many things that we can do, involving expatriate Pakistani pharmacists, how their services can be used. And I know that he is doing much more than this research capacity building workshop. So think about, please be open, be generous, be open to share your ideas, thoughts with others. It's not easy. I've never said that it will be easy. The journey will be easy. It will be difficult and it will not happen overnight, but we have to start somewhere. And having a group of like-minded people, having working together are the crucial things that you will need to do in order to change the landscape of pharmacy and pharmacy workforce in Pakistan. Build research capacity, very crucial, very important. And this workshop and this series of workshop is targeting that as well, that we have local well informed and trained research personnel who can develop local evidence that inform local policies, that with an aim to justify the role and need of pharmacists, both within the hospital and in the community settings as well. Aisha also spoke about remuneration or the salaries of pharmacists. That is very unfortunate. That especially in community pharmacies, the salaries aren't that good. In industry, I know that the salaries have improved, but still, they are not very good. Again, with regards to the public sector, the salaries of public sector 17 grade are the same. Probably, if we compare ourselves with the people who do um, um, who join police service or any other civil services, then yes, the perks that they get is a bit different. And with farm with doctors, which they can do private practice and they can make more money. Yes, that is true. And probably there needs to be a mechanism that can compensate for that. But at the end of the day, we again we are still a developing country. With regards to remuneration or salaries, we it will be very difficult to match in the Western world. Again is advocacy, and it is closely built with research capacity, that we need to advocate for the services that we can provide and have that research evidence that will potentially inform the national policy, that have a career specific career pathways for pharmacists, a policy that dictates how community pharmacists need to work, what sort of what things a pharmacist can do. Can he be given privileges to prescribe a medicine? Can he do the substitution only? Things like that. And then having a policy to reinforce, enforcement division, very important, that whether we need a community pharmacist in all community pharmacies and whether they are practicing or not, then slightly, I think we have to blame ourselves as well. Sometimes we sell our certificate or license to community pharmacies just to take 10-15,000 rupees, and which is very unfair to the profession itself. um, Probably the people are reluctant to work in community pharmacies as well because of the salaries, but this does not mean that we start selling our licenses. So when we are talking about developing or starting a new service, this is how this is a framework that is proposed by the Medical Research Council in the UK, that this is how it needs to be done. First, we need to develop that service. And how do we start off with a service? That you do a very good literature review, you see what has been done elsewhere, whether that has been successful or not. If that has not been successful, why that has not been successful, whether your healthcare system allow for a such service to develop or not. When you have done that, you have done the group work, you have done the discussions with all the possible potential stakeholders, then you start off that service. Once you have started off this service, then you do the feasibility and piloting. Very important that you test the procedures. You Because piloting is done before a big randomized controlled trial to see whether what you have developed will is either going to work or not, whether the pharmacist who is delivering the service is okay to work with the doctor, whether the doctor can work with the pharmacist or the nurse, or the healthcare system can allow such service to develop or flourish as well or not. Once you have done that, then you'll do the evaluation, that you evaluate the effectiveness of the service. You understand that what change and how this change has been brought, what is so different now. Then you assess the cost effectiveness as well. Then once you have done this, then you implement the service. You started off with one hospital, then you start off with the state level, then you start at national level. So you start slow, start uh, slow, and then you build on it. So how do we actually then start? And everything starts off with a good quality research question. And next 10 minutes I'll spend on developing a good research question. That was one of the learning outcomes of the of this today's presentation. So I'll spend next 10 minutes in generating a good research question. So what is a research question? As a research question or a research problem is any uncertainty So when I say any uncertainty, that can be related to local, regional, national, or international, about a problem that can be challenged, examined, and analyzed to provide useful information. So basically, you have a problem, you try to find a solution to that problem, and that becomes your research question. A good research question should be clear, that if you read it, you know what you are doing. It should be focused. Should not be vague. It should be relevant. It should be doable, and it should have the potential to make contribution to knowledge. So whenever you are deciding, when you are thinking to do your own research project in an area of your practice, think about all these things, that whether the research question is clear or not. Is it focused enough? Is it doable? Is it relevant to what I'm doing? How this research is going to make a difference to the current practice and policy? And what potential contribution is going to make to the current knowledge? Ask about all these things before you go and start any research project. Why do we need a research question? Because the research question will help you maintain research focus. It will help you choose the right methodology. It will help you choose the appropriate statistical methods if you are doing a quantitative research which involves numbers. And by answering it, if you are doing it as for the sake of your masters or a PhD, you will get it done. So you start off with your research question, make it a good quality, relevant, doable question, and then build on it. And this is a very typical research problem. I understand that some of you are undergraduate students. That is why I have kept this very simple, very basic. So you start off with your research problem. You go and review the literature to see whether such problem has already been answered or not. If the question has been answered, then see whether the findings from that particular research are transferable to your local context or not. If these are transferable to your local context, then probably you don't need to invent another wheel. You don't need to do this research. Then if there is nothing has been done, if the findings are not transferable, then you will specify your research purpose, that what exactly you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. And by answering how you want to achieve it, you will have a data collection, that what sort of data is required, how you are going to collect that data, who is going to collect that data, how the data needs to be analyzed, who will analyze the data. And once you have agreed on all these questions, then you go back and write your final report. And then how do we develop our research question? Very important thing to consider, that I get asked this question quite a lot, that what research project I'm interested in research, what should I do, how should I do it? Being if you are, especially most of you will be writing your final year exams and thinking about going abroad for your masters and PhDs, and you will be asked often that if you write an email to a professor at Harvard and tell that you are very interested in research and you want to do research, probably he or she is never going to reply your email. You tell exactly what you want to do and how you want to do it and what potential contribution is going to make to the current existing knowledge. Then probably if you have targeted the right person, if that is his or her area of research, they might respond to you. But only sending blank emails that indicating your interest, you are taking a lot of chances. Okay. So how do we develop a research question? You look, either the research question is what is hot these days, what is the current issue, what is in these days. So COVID-19, for example, these days is very in. So you can think about potentially how and what you can do with regards to COVID-19. You can look at the burden of COVID-19 on the healthcare system, role of pharmacists in healthcare COVID-19, the nature of services provided by pharmacists during the COVID-19, what impact COVID-19 had on pharmacy services, what is pharmacist experience, what is the pharmacist preparedness and readiness for COVID-19. So you can look at different things, different angles from patient's perspective, for pharmacy workforce, uh, for pharmacy education related perspective, for national healthcare policy related. So you can do a number of things only with COVID-19 alone. Any issue in your practice, Aisha mentioned that workforce is an issue. Then probably she can look at how many number of man hours she needs to spend doing the management work. Can If they cannot hire a pharmacist, can they hire a technician, or can they hire a dispenser to do the basic stuff, and she can focus more towards her clinical role. Or another issue is, for example, having more pharmacists on the ward, whether that improves patient outcomes or not. Probably you can have one ward, one round with two pharmacists versus one round in one pharmacist, and see where the outcomes were better, which ward the outcomes were better. If you are doing a service, then whether the medication reviews are working or not. If you are starting off a new service, then you can evaluate that particular new service. If there is a controversy that you want to highlight, or you want to kill that controversy. For example, there is a controversy that hydroxychloroquine, when the COVID started, can be used for post-exposure prophylaxis. Probably you can undertake a research to address that controversy, to find an answer to that controversy. And again, you can look at risk gaps in the literature, whether hydroxychloroquine is better than remdesivir for COVID-19 or not. And then finally, knowledge transfer, that you have developed a service for diabetic patients. Now you want to develop a service for hypertension patients. So you have developed evidence for one. Now you want to translate that evidence to another service. So rather than from PICO, we'll talk about PICO as well. Let's talk about PICO first. This is the PICO model, if you have not heard about it. PICO model is about population. P is population, patient, or problem. I is the intervention. What is the intervention that you're going to give? C is the control group. With what will be the control group? And O is the outcome, and T is the time, if applicable. So you can change the population, you can change the intervention, you can change the control group, you can change the outcome measures, and then you can have a different research question. So if you have developed evidence for one service in one population using one control, looking at one outcome, probably you can look at a different outcome, or you can look at a different intervention, probably you can look at a different population. So you can change one of these to develop a new research question. Finally, how do you refine those research questions? You have developed a vague idea or some idea about a particular research question. Now it's time to refine those research idea. You need to look at whether the research question you're thinking about is feasible or not. Consider cost, expertise, recruitment, whether you are expert enough to do that research, or you need to have a team that can do that research. Do you have the funding to undertake that particular research? Uh, if not, then probably you need to scale it down, start small, what you can do. Is it interesting? Why you are interested in this? Is it for your professional growth, for your training, for your career growth? Why you are interested in this? Novel, because the most important research that gets published in high impact factor journals is that your research is something that you bring new to the table. And how do you know whether this is new? Number one, you engage with literature, you read the literature around it. You need mentor guidance. You discuss this with your senior members of your team and see what needs to be done and how it can be done. Because if your research idea is novel, it's easier to get funding and it's easier to publish. You need to look at whether your research is ethical or not. Very important, research ethics. You cannot inflict injury on people in order to achieve your research goal. Okay, so whatever we do, it has to be ethical. And final is relevant, that what is the relevance of your research in making an impact on clinical practice or future research. We have already discussed PICO model, that how PICO model can be used in refining a research idea. And this is the quiz that I'm going to do now before we close, before my final word is I have talked about PICO model. And now look at the first question and think about the PICO model and see what is the issue in the first question. You can write in the chat box. If you look at this research question, see what elements of PICO are missing. In the first question, in the second question, and in the third question. Dr. Siddiqui has already mentioned P is patient population, I is intervention, C is comparison or control group, O is outcomes. So if you look at first question, what is missing? You look at second question, what is missing? If you look at the third question, what is missing? T, Rabia, T, sometimes not all research questions are time bound. So that is why T was in the bracket. I didn't put T in with the main PICO, because not all research questions can be time bound. And that's why T, if relevant, you can use. If not relevant, you cannot use. Okay. So in the first question, are medication reviews effective in reducing pain? So the first group is patient population and control group are missing. See, are medication reviews effective in reducing pain? In what population? Against what group, control group? Okay. In the second question, are medication reviews effective in reducing pain among patients with chronic pain? So population is here, patients with chronic pain, but there is no control group. Medication reviews is the intervention. Reducing pain is the outcome. Patients with chronic pain are the patient group. And the final question is very comprehensive. There are no issues in this question, because compared to NUS-led medication, which is the control group, are medication reviews, which is the intervention, effective in reducing pain, which is O is the outcome, among patients with chronic pain. So this is the population. So all elements of PICO are complete here. So finally, how do you choose your topic? Be selfish, because it requires a large time commitment. Focus on what interests you. Think about your CV, what impact it will have on your CV, on your career, on your future practice. And remember that no research is useless. So whatever you do, small or big, it will have some impact on you directly or indirectly. Okay, always feel free to talk to people before you decide on an area of your choice. Don't rush into decision making. Take your time. Remember that quality versus quantity, quality is much important than quantity. Always think about the size of the project. Do not start off a project with an aim to win a Nobel Prize. Start small, do it, achieve it, move on to the next one. Because if you start on a big project that you cannot complete, you will lose interest in your research. You will lose interest in the project. You will lose interest in doing that thing. You can be a wife, you can be a husband, you can be a son, daughter, and then you can be a pharmacist. Okay, so there are other needs as well that will engage you, that will require you, that will train you, not only your work. So think about it as well when you are doing your research. Finally, there is no shortcut to achieving excellence, and change will not happen overnight. If you want to change workforce in Pakistan, pharmacy practice in Pakistan, there is no shortcut to it. It will take time and it will never happen overnight. It will require self belief, hard work, commitment, teamwork, and having a shared goal. And finally, and most importantly, perhaps, is start small and go slow. With this, thank you all very much for being here, listening to me for the past 2 hours. I would sincerely appreciate your feedback, what positive or negative, that will help me build as well and improve as well as we go along. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask those questions. I know that I've gone 1-2 minutes uh, above the allocated time, but we had a good discussion. I think so. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Dr. Sana Sarfraz, अगर आप हैं यहाँ पे तो please go ahead.
Yes, sir, I'm over here. Dr. Hadi, there was a question that was asked by Mariam that what is the correct way of evaluating the literature review that you mentioned?
Okay. Very good question. What is the purpose of that literature review? I'll ask Mariam you that question because my answer will depend on the purpose. If you're using doing that literature review for identifying a research gap, that is different than reviewing the literature for a systematic review or for writing a literature review. Again, if you are doing a systematic review, then there are a number of steps that are required to undertake a systematic literature review. You need to search a certain number of data sets using keywords in order to identify all relevant articles related to that particular research question. Then there will be some sort of quality assessment, and there are different tools are available to do that quality assessment. So once the quality assessment is done, then there is data extraction and analysis, and then report writing. So doing a systematic literature review is a very complex and time-taking process, and it is a research on its own right. Okay. About the literature review for to practice evidence-based medicine is straightforward. You go to your key resources. You read a guideline, for example. What is the first choice for the management of hypertension? So you go to the American Society or the NICE guidelines. You can go to and see which drugs are used at what dose and how these needs to be monitored. So these guidelines are evidence-based guidelines. So you can be sure that if your patient belongs to that particular group of patients, then you can use that particular drug and you can be confident that you have made a good decision. Okay. Or else there is something called up to date. I don't know whether you have access to up to date or not. It is an online resource, or you can use a BNF, British National Formulary. Again, it has drug doses kind of thing, indication, side effects. So you can use those resources to make an informed and evidence-based decision. I hope that I've answered your question.
Yes, thank you, sir. Sir, as there are many undergraduate students who attended today's workshop, so can you suggest some basic studies that they can do for the research purpose on a student level related to the pharmacy practice? Because they do study pharmacy practice in fourth and final prof. So can you
Yes.
give them some suggestions so they can have an idea?
Okay. That is very difficult question to answer. I'll tell you why this is difficult question to answer. Um, I know that I do understand that pharmacists do study pharmacy practice in their fourth and final year, but unfortunately, we do not teach research much in our undergraduate. At least, to the best of my knowledge. If I'm wrong, people can correct me here. That with regards to our ability to understand research, to undertake research is secondary. To understand uh, um, the research, you know, is very limited. That has always have had negative impact in our ability to undertake research as well. So that is the problem. With regards to read any research methods book, any. I do not have a particular preference. Any research method book you can read, and you can start off, build the basic principles first before you start reading the papers. Start building your theoretical knowledge. For example, if the paper says it is a cohort study or it is a randomized control trial, so if you don't understand what is a randomized control trial, then how you'll be able to understand the findings of that randomized control trial? So I will suggest, because unfortunately research methods are not very well covered in our undergraduate curriculum, I'll suggest that you build on developing that theoretical knowledge and pick any message, any book that you can use. Anything else?
I believe that's it, sir. Thank you, Dr. Hadi, for such an informative session. I'm sure the participants learned a lot, and they'll try to implement the learning in their place of work, especially as Aisha has highlighted certain issues. I hope that this session was useful for her and for the students who want to follow up research after they pass out. I think that this session was very useful for them as well. I would also like to thank the participants who joined the workshop. Thank you, everyone, and Ramzan Mubarak. And thank you, Dr. Hadi, for sparing your time and
No
giving.
problem. It's been a pleasure. And I think Mr. Tufail has raised his hand. If you want to give him a minute or so.
Sure, sure.
सर मैं अंडर ग्रेजुएट स्टूडेंट हूँ सर. मेरा क्वेश्चन नहीं है कि आप कोई व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप या कोई इस तरह की चीज़ें बनाए ताकि हम आपके साथ पार्टिसिपेट करें, या कोई आपसे, क्योंकि बहुत से स्टूडेंट होते हैं जो फार्मेसी प्रैक्टिस में अपना फ्यूचर वगैरह बनाते हैं सर. तो प्लीज़, और सर ये जो बाहर ममालिक के जो एग्जाम्स होते हैं, जिस तरह आपके प्रोफाइल में भी लिखा था FESH एग्जाम, ये आपकी जो सर्टिफिकेशन थी, तो इसके बारे में हमें अंडर ग्रेजुएट्स को गाइड करें ताकि हमें कुछ आइडिया वगैरह हो सर.
जी तुफैल साहब, व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप तो मेरा कोई भी नहीं है स्टूडेंट्स के साथ, और उसकी एक वजह ये भी है कि मैं ऑनेस्टली स्पीकिंग कि मैं टाइम कमिटमेंट भी वैसी नहीं हो सकती कि व्हाट्सएप पे मैं स्टूडेंट्स के सवालों के जवाब दे सकूं, क्योंकि अदर वर्क रिलेटेड कमिटमेंट्स हैं. तो आई थिंक कि बेस्ट फोरम आप मुझे ईमेल करें अगर इफ यू हैव अ स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन, तो इंशाल्लाह आई विल बी मोर देन हैप्पी टू रिस्पॉन्ड टू योर क्वेश्चंस. So inshallah I'll try my best to answer your questions there. Work WhatsApp की मैं responsibility at this stage तो मैं नहीं लेता. Perhaps if we have a group of students who are really interested and they're working on something, and then perhaps we can think about doing that. And I'll leave this to Dr. Siddiqui to decide. to see if a WhatsApp group is a potential, or if we have such a group where the students can ask questions. Regarding my जो मैंने fellowship की आपने जो बात की है वो that fellowship is teaching fellowship. It is not for clinical pharmacy or pharmacy related fellowship. ये fellowship है higher education academy की. उसके लिए मैंने एक सर्टिफिकेट प्रोग्राम किया था, उसके बाद वो फेलोशिप की मैंने एप्लीकेशन कंप्लीट की थी. लेकिन अगर आप टीचिंग साइड पे हैं तो HEC भी एनकरेज करता है. इनफैक्ट HEC पे करता है आपको कि आप जो है वो फेलोशिप की एप्लीकेशन जमा करा दें. ये जो फेलोशिप होती है इट इज़ बेस्ड ऑन योर टीचिंग एक्सपीरियंस और आपने कैसे स्टूडेंट लर्निंग को एनहांस किया है, उसके बाद आपको ये फेलोशिप मिलती है. तो यू नीड टू डॉक्यूमेंट दैट और क्रिएट अ स्टोरी, राइट अ स्टोरी अबाउट इट, और फिर आपको ये फेलोशिप मिलती है. तो मैं आजकल एक मेंटर कर रहा हूँ एक स्टूडेंट को अपना. हमारे हैं यूनिवर्सिटी मुझे भूल गई है, वो अपनी फेलोशिप की एप्लीकेशन जमा करा रहे हैं, पाकिस्तानी हैं, फार्मासिस्ट ही हैं. तो इंशाल्लाह लेट्स सी कि उनका क्या बनता है. तो उसके बाद वंस आई नो देन विल नो कि भाई कि उसका कुछ यूजफुल है भी सही कि नहीं.
थैंक यू सर.
और क्या क्वेश्चन था कि आरिफा क्वेश्चन, व्हाई वी कांट डू रिसर्च एट आवर अंडरग्रेजुएट टाइम in 4th year or 5th year. Again, this needs to be looked at from curriculum perspective. This is very unfortunate that there is no research in our undergraduate curriculum. Where I worked in 6-7 different universities, and all universities require their undergraduate students to do some sort of research. In Qatar, they focus so much on research that they have to do 2 research projects. One is mandatory, one is elective. So, you know, again, what is our vision of producing our pharmacy workforce? What we want, what is the purpose of producing our pharmacy workforce? Probably we need to revisit that purpose and ask ourselves the question that what we need our pharmacists to do in the next 15 to 20 years. Any more questions?